Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone joining our webinar today. So welcome for a new session with AppTweak. Today we're going to be talking about Apple Search Ads campaigns, and more specifically, what our team at AppTweak has learned optimizing Apple Search Ads campaigns for various clients. So we're very happy to have all of you here. As part of the usual procedure when we begin a webinar, I'm inviting everyone who can hear us to confirm everything's looking fine. You hear us well. You can also tell us where you're joining from, which company you work for, how many campaigns you currently manage, or what is the latest CPP you guys have run. So good morning, Alexandra, Matos. Good afternoon, Andre, Katon. See, everything seems to be working fine, so very happy to see our chat is already reacting. So for everyone, my name is Simon. I'm head of AS at AppTweak, and today I'm joined for this webinar by Lucas and Benoit from our data scientists. So guys, thank you for joining, and if I can ask you to introduce yourselves and explain a bit what you guys have been doing with Apple Search Ads for the past 12 plus months.
Yeah, I guess I'll go. So I'm Benoit. I'm a senior data scientist here at AppTweak, for it's been a bit more than 3 years now. And yeah, for the past year and a half, been working a lot on the Apple.
I think we have just lost Benoit with technical difficulties.
Okay.
So while we try to catch up, Lucas, if you can pick up.
Yeah, so I'm Lucas. I'm also a data scientist here at AppTweak. I've been mostly working with our clients with direct campaign management, mostly with search results campaigns where there is the most to be done. So I've got hands-on experience with keyword bid editing, be it at the cost per installs level or MMP level, such as cost per trials or any other events which can serve as a target for optimization. And yeah, I've mostly been in contact with our client, listening to their problem and trying to create strategies to solve them.
Great. So to get people situated, I think we should get Benoit back in a couple seconds, but while we wait for him to rejoin, I think for people to know a bit how this webinar is going to go, welcome back, Benoit. Hopefully no more technical difficulties. Just explaining to everyone the rundown for the webinar. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to have a 40 or so minute chat going over different lessons that we have learned over the past year. So we'll cover topics such as account setup, such as tips to scale, tips to optimize budgets and campaigns. And from there, we'll try to keep at least 10 minutes towards the end of the webinar for audience questions. And so for this, obviously, everyone, you are welcome to send messages in the chat, but also if you want a question to address a question directly to Benoit, Lucas, or myself, you also have a question box in the panel, which is something that can help make your question stand out. And you can also vote for other people's questions if you feel like that one is one we should absolutely address. So with this admin out of the way, Benoit, let's give it another go to explain a bit how you've been working on Apple Search Ads at AppTweak.
Yeah, I hope I won't get kicked out from the Wi-Fi this time, but it should be fine. So yeah, what I was saying is that I've been working a lot with clients. We've been providing some service like audits or scans, where we just have a look at the campaign structure and everything, and we try to find what could be improved, challenge a bit what has been done. And doing this for I don't know, maybe a good 10, even 20 clients, we have now found some general stuff. And the point, I guess, of this webinar is to try to share what I've observed and try to avoid like the common pitfalls and provide some tips and tricks on how to properly scale the ASA campaigns.
Amazing. So right before we jump in, one final plug. This webinar is hosted by AppTweak, so obviously people probably know already that AppTweak has become an official Apple Search Ads partner. But obviously, if you're not too sure what that means, or if you're interested in learning more of how our platform operates with campaign management for Apple Search Ads, well, basically inviting everyone to check out how it works. And now, without further ado, we can dive in to the actual tips, actual tricks that we can share. And for that, I think I'm going to start with you, Benoit, actually, because I think it's easier to start with the broad picture. And specifically, I think the first topic to address is account structure. I don't know the exact number of accounts you've audited in the past year, but basically, what can you tell us about the main pitfalls, best practices that should make people's lives easier if you make sure that your fundamentals are kept well in order?
I don't know the exact number either, but indeed, what I do first, like the first thing I do in this kind of audits, is to just look at the account structure. I don't look yet at the keyword, I don't look at MMP or anything else, just the structure. I just pulled all the campaigns that we have and try to have a view by country and by campaign type. When I say campaign type, to me, there are like 4 campaign types that you can group. On the one end, you have the discovery campaigns, which is like its own group. And on the other end, you have all the performance campaigns. That can mean brand defense. That can mean generic or category, however you want to call it, and competitor. And just the first thing is to look at this structure. For now, I'm just talking about search result campaign. I guess we'll have time to talk about the other ad placements. So first thing, I'm just looking at search result campaign. And what I may find, usually the first thing I'm looking at is whether you do have a split between discovery and performance. To me, this is the first pitfall in which many advertisers fall into, is to have a campaign that has a mix of discovery and performance. Maybe to be a bit clearer, when I say discovery, I usually mean 3 things. It's the leveraging broad match, or you leveraging search match. So the point is you're bidding to find some other keywords on which you will appear and to extract those that are good. It also includes testing. So sometimes you know the keyword that you want to try out. You don't know yet if they're good. So you're just going to bid on them and see if they're good. The first level of structure is to separate this from the performance, because these are not campaigns made to perform. They are campaigns made to find new keywords. And then in the performance campaigns, usually you want at least the brand defense to be separated, because you're not expecting the same KPIs. You're not going to monitor the same things, basically. And then ideally, you want to split the generic from the competitor, because it's the same. You don't have the same intent. You're not going to be trying to scale on the same things. For a generic campaign, you're going to want to target more keywords. For a competitor campaign, he's more going to be monitoring the share of voice of said competitor on that word and making sure that the cost per acquisition are kept in check. So I guess that would be the first main point to look at, is making sure that you have the right structure, because you need to have a solid base. If you want to scale on something, you need to have a base that is solid, basically.
All right, Luca, I don't know if you have other tips, but I know that right now we're talking mostly about search. I think it's still going to be the main focus of the webinar, but maybe to bounce back on what was said, some of the things I usually hear about as a consultant are also questions on whether it's okay or not to have a single campaign running for multiple countries, or as well questions sometimes about the multi-ad placement. So like you, Luca, have been working more on fewer accounts, but going deeper into the challenges of scaling. Benoit, obviously, feel free to jump in as well. But like, what are your opinions on whether you should, for instance, go single campaign is add a single country, per campaign, or if it's okay if there are circumstances in which you can actually run multi-country campaigns.
Okay, regarding this, in my opinion, multi-country campaigns should be aborted as much as possible. The main reasons for this are the following: is first, competition is not spread evenly across the countries. So you might like win an auction in a country with a certain bid and lose it in another one. So you will want to actually be able to have different bids depending on the countries. On top of that, even more like revenues generated by people will depend on the country. So you might also have like different limits in the amount you will be willing to pay for a user depending on the country. So this is the second, I think, a reason why you should avoid it as much as possible. And lastly, also something which will like not be a great thing to do. Sorry for so something also which is not good by doing multi-country is that at the end language might also depend, and so like some keywords will just have zero traffic in some countries, and since they will have like different bids, it wouldn't like make like any like reason to group them in the same campaign, because at the end in the monitoring, then you will have everything mixed together and it will be way harder to know where something is messing up if you have some problems with it.
Maybe just to jump in on this, there is one caveat. So I totally agree with what Luca is saying. If I'm playing devil's advocate, there is one context in which when I do my audit, I see multi-country campaigns. The only reason why it's okay is when you want to test out many new markets. Let's say you are never yet targeting anything in Europe. Why not having one campaign with a few keywords across like all European countries so that you can have a sense of where you perform well or not that well. And then later on you split it. So multi-country, why not? But temporarily to explore, and then you split it on the country level for all the reasons that Luca mentioned.
Yeah, and also it is true that at the end, the more you split, the more micromanagement you will need. So if you are not ready to spend enough time on it, it might still be a good solution.
Well, unless you have automation.
True.
Well, we're gonna get there, but so, sorry for those in the audience who feel like this is something they've already heard, but just trying to make sure we get everyone situated on the level of knowledge we're going to share. We're going to try and increase little by little. So we're really starting with the basics, and I think in here, Benoit, I'm going to turn to you because I think, at least in my experience, that people often mention that they've heard about the basics, they know the basics, but we don't always talk so much about why it's essential to have a good account structure. So, like, what are the issues you've found have come from account, like, let's say, poor account structure, or sometimes rather an account structure that was done a bit too fast, or that was done by, let's say, an agency first and then another agency, or internally someone started doing different. Why do these things matter in the end?
I guess there are many points. The main one is going to be reporting. In the end, that's a big part of the game, being able to report on what's going on, and especially on what has changed recently. And if you don't have a proper split of those campaign types and of those countries, you will see, for instance, in a campaign, one KPI getting ahead of end, maybe the cost per acquisition getting a bit higher, and you won't know from the get-go why, because you haven't had a proper structure. If you had a structure where you do have like one generic campaign per country, and you see that the generic campaign in France is getting a higher CPI, you already have some info. If you mixed everything together, let's say in your generic campaign, you are multi-country, and you mixed in broad match and exact match, there are many reasons why this cost per acquisition might have gone out of hand. Maybe it's because your broad match is starting making you appear on a keyword that is not as good a performer as the other ones. Maybe it's like in one of the sub-countries within this multi-country campaign that you have an issue currently with a competitor that is targeting you. So the main point to me is reporting, but then the other one is ability to scale. And the thing you mentioned about like taking over from an agency, actually it happened to us recently. We took over campaigns from an agency, and that's when I realized that it is hard to start from scratch. So we just had to make it work the way it was built, and it was a bit awkward because when you want to scale, you want to have good foundations. And let's say you haven't split correctly the campaigns, then you can't just like, for instance, plug ROAS. In my opinion, it's not possible to plug ROAS and do ROAS-based optimization if within your campaign you still have a mix of a broad match and exact match, because you can't say general things about the keywords if you don't have a split by intent, which brings me also to the level of ad group. For now, I've talked only about like campaign structure, but also ad group should be properly structured if you want to have a way to properly scale.
Yeah, maybe I can like jump on this. Is that ad group structure is also something super important, like for as Benoit said, is because if you build your ad group structure such that every ad group is actually like an intent, encapsulate an intent. So an intent could be like, for example, if you're a music app, let's say like the offline intent will be, okay, listen to offline music, offline music player. All these keywords is kind of the same intent of a user which want to listen to music, even when he's not connected to internet. If you manage to have an ad group splitting which always like encapsulate this kind of intent, one of the great things you can do is if you see that one of these intent is actually relevant for you and you think you should be performing well, but you see you have like bad performance on this one, it means that you can directly link a CPP to it, because CPP are directly linked at the ad group level. So if you directly have this kind of structure also, on top of monitoring, you can easily also like enhance your performance. And on the other end, also, if you see that, for example, you have a campaign in a country which has better performance than the one in the others, you might probably want to make a bit of the budget go from one to the other. This is not possible when you have everything like plugged at the same way, at the same place. Sorry. So yeah, those are like really the reason why it's really important, and why, as Benoit said, like you can't go for ROAS like optimizations once before like having like a decent structure enough to be able to take this simple decision.
Right. I would really like to get to the discovery campaigns, because I'm already seeing a couple of reactions in the chat. Before that, there's just one question for the overall, like covering the spectrum of really the fundamentals that I want to get both of your opinions on, and that's multi-placement campaigns, or rather multi-placement strategy. I think it's been now over a year at least, probably more than that by now, that we've had the search tab campaign, that we've had the Today tab campaign, the product page campaign. In your opinion, what are the benefits of these campaigns, and also what are the challenges? What are the things to be mindful of when running these campaigns?
I guess I can take over on this one. It's an interesting topic, and because I've seen many advertisers not doing anything on these three other ad placements. So as you said, like search tab, Today tab, product page. A lot of the time when people think about Apple search ads, and I admit it, like it's also my case sometimes, you think about search results. You think about keywords and appearing on top on the search of a keyword. But indeed, Apple search ads is not only that. There are other placements, and it's really interesting to leverage them. But you should not think of them in the same way you think of a search result campaign. In my view, some of them, mostly like Today tab, is more, you should judge them more like you would a billboard campaign, some advertisement that has a really high impression to people that might have low intent. Like the opposite of search results. For search results, you bid on keywords. So you target people, users, that already have some intent related to you, at least as long as you bid on relevant keywords. For Today tab, indeed, it's not the case, but that doesn't mean that it's not worth it, because in the end, it's the same reason why you would like run ads on billboards or TV. You have more impressions, and that can lead further down the line to more acquisitions. Maybe people are not going to click on the ad in Today tab. I mean, some of them will, and you will get installs from this, but also a lot of them are going to be more aware of your app being there and what you can offer, especially if you leverage CPPs. And then this means that you could get more in-store further down the line. That's actually something that you can measure. It's a bit tricky, but it's possible to have a proper baseline and try to measure the true impact of this other type of ad placements. But my point is that whether or not you want to measure this incrementality, there is always a bid that will make sense for you, even if it's quite low. There is a bid. You have no cost of just bidding on it. Worst come to worst, you don't appear, but if you do, it will be at a control price because you always have a way to select this price with the bid. So I'm always encouraging people to at least try out. If in the end it doesn't work for you, why not doing it? But at least give it a try.
Right, and I guess actually for this, if you compare it to doing out-of-home campaigns or TV campaigns, there's also probably an element of playing on seasonality or playing on even having like pairing this with actual out-of-home or TV, like making sure basically that you go big and go multi-channel, not just multi-placement in Apple Search Ads, but multi-channel. If you don't have the budget needed to run this year long, but still give it a try. And if you have to be strategic as to when to give it a try, it's really about when does the type of campaign make sense with other marketing initiatives.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I want to bounce back on some of the things I've already seen in the chat regarding discovery specifically. So we had Marek saying our category is so, I think it should be niche, not nice, but saying the category is such that he doesn't need a discovery campaign, he only does performance. On the other hand, we have Stefan telling us discovery can deliver solid results, especially compared to competitor. So in here, I'm really curious, kind of, how do you take Z's approach, and in general, like, how do you define discovery properly? Because from having prepared the webinar with you guys, I know you have a specific definition and approach to discovery, and also why do you consider that based on that everyone should still be doing discovery?
I guess we both have a lot to say on this topic, Luca. Actually, there are like two questions. I can give it a go, and then maybe you will have for sure a lot of stuff to say, because we do have a lot of stuff to say. And what we're about to say here, I guess, is the core of what we talk about during this kind of audits. A lot of people underestimate the potential of finding new keywords. And indeed, like most of the time, the traffic you're going to get is going to come from one big keyword, especially if you do brand defense. Brand defense is going to be major. And you can feel that, okay, most of the work is done with these like 10 keywords generic. Why bother with more? I already have good performance. But there are many reasons why you should be looking out for new keywords. First reason is that new keywords will pop up from time to time. Some apps appear, so some search intents appear that didn't exist before. And the other reason is that this is a way to find cheaper installs. If you find words that, like the top generic words, if you are like, let's say, music app, the term, the keyword music, everybody knows about it. All the competition is bidding on it. But some terms that are a bit more frequent might not have the same level of competition. So it's a way to get a good amount of downloads for a cheaper price, probably. The point of this is that this should always be separated. So it's something that is running on the side. It's like kind of an exploration. You have campaigns to exploit, you have campaigns to explore. If right now you feel like you're already at a good pace of keywords, that maybe you allocate a fewer amount of budget to this exploration, but this amount should not be zero. If it's only 5%, why not? I would advocate for more, for 10, 20%. If right now you're struggling finding new keywords, maybe you're going to allocate 50% of your budget to finding new words. Like, let's say you just launched a market, you don't know what words are out there, allocate a lot of your budget to discovery. But my point is, it should not be zero.
Well, sorry, Luca, I'm sure you have a rebuttal, so I'll let you go. I also have a lot of questions to follow up, but maybe can you give us like your experience when it comes to running discovery, not just at the early stage, but long term? What are the benefits?
Yeah. I want to bounce also on. I don't remember who was saying this, but that the people who didn't need like any discovery campaign because he had a super niche like category. And the thing is, something I want to say about this is, even though your intent is a niche intent, I will say, you can sometimes even get like interesting like keywords to bid on outside of your own intent. What I mean by that is that it's maybe not the best example for a discovery campaign, but Instagram, I managed for some clients which weren't like a social network app to get positive ROAS on keywords such as Instagram. So by doing like by using broad match and search match, you will actually manage to discover keywords which will at the first sight not seem that relevant for you. But thing is, with the right bits, you could actually still get profitability out of it. So this is, I think, another reason why you should still be doing like discovery, even though you will maybe think you already have all the keywords needed. Another reason, so maybe not now that we motivated a bit why we should like do it, I want to say a bit on how to do it well, because that's also something important. A discovery campaigns is actually something which require a lot of work. And why is it so? It's because when you run a discovery campaign, you should actually come back to it really often to see what's in it and take action onto it. Because some of the keywords you might discover might be maybe Instagram, which won't be like profitable for you, but some of them might be super interesting one. And you will need to take action for both, actually. For maybe, for example, Instagram, which is not that relevant for you, you might want to actually stop bidding on it or extracting it with a super low bid to be sure that you won't be like spending a lot on tabs for these keywords. So how to do it? It's actually to set up as negative keywords in any like broad match or search match campaign you will be running, and extract it in one of your low performance campaign and put a low bid onto it. Same for the actual good performer. It's a good performer, nice. You discovered it, but you might still want to refine the bids at which you are willing to pay for it, because you might be able to actually get a bit more return out of it by setting up the right bids. So maybe I've went a bit too fast on how to act on it. I also want to like remember all the levers that you can use, and also at AppTweak, to actually build these discoveries. Because I've mentioned here that for broad match and search match, you might need to actually put as negative keyword the keywords that you saw. But you can also do discovery using exact match campaign. At AppTweak, for example, we have a lot of keyword speaker which are available, and you can then create campaigns into which you will actually put, for example, all of your ASO keywords or all of your ranked keywords. We have even like some keyword speaker which are directly plugged to our own Atlas model, which is a recommending system, which actually use like semantic of the store to propose like relevant keywords based on the starting keywords or your app. And then you can test them out in a campaign in exact match. And the good thing with exact match discovery is that, contrary to the broad match and search match discoveries, you can directly get insights at the MMP level. Because so far, all the MMPs provide you data down to the keyword level and not the search term level. So when you are doing a broad match and search match discovery, you might have insights onto the performance on your keywords, but only at the cost per installs and not cost per relevant event that you will have set it up in your app. So quick recap on all what I said. So how to do discovery properly, run the 3 type of it to get access to the most, the broader audience of keywords, I would say. So exact match using keyword picker or your knowledge of the store, broad match, and search match. And once you've set this up, go often to this campaign, look for the search terms for the search match and broad match, set them as negative, and set an exact match bid on them.
Right, and so maybe to make sure I follow, and if I'm following, I think the audience is also able to, because you guys know more than I do on this. But basically, your point is that for someone like Andre, who's telling us that search match delivers a lot of low volume terms where he can't see if the like what are the keywords that are actually performing or not performing. You have this option of AppTweak's exact match discovery, which is powered by our own semantic engine based on all the data that you guys have been playing with over the years, basically. And on the other hand, for those who feel like they are getting good performance out of a discovery campaign, then actually it should be potentially treated as a rather negative signal, if I understand, or rather as a signal to take action. It's not necessarily negative, but it's more of, from what I understand, a moment where you don't want your discovery campaign to be performing so well, because otherwise it just gets stuck on the same keywords that you should move to the performance side just in order to force discovery to start discovering again. Did I get it right?
Yeah. For me, you totally get it right.
Actually, just it's to mention that that's something that in the audits that I do, I point out as negative. So if I see a discovery campaign with a super low CPA, it's a red flag in a way. It's not that bad, but it does mean that it's not proper discovery. Because if you do proper discovery, the CPA of your discovery is going to be a bit higher, because the good keywords, you're going to extract them and bid on them with the right bid in your performance campaigns. And so at some point you will run out of the top keywords. You will still find some installs, and so you will get a decent cost per acquisition. But if it's the best out of all your campaign types, it means likely that there is a way to improve that discovery campaign.
And maybe also something I forgot to mention, which could, I mean, it might be obvious, and sorry if I'm too obvious on this one, but I forgot to mention that also sometimes like your branded terms are actually hidden inside your search match and broad match campaign. And this is also something which might look like, oh, I've got great performance. But if you actually permit search match and broad match to bid on your branded keywords, that's only normal that you are getting great performance. So a good habit also is to set as negative keywords, not only the keywords you've extracted, but actually all your branded keywords and all the keywords you are already bidding on, because you know them, and that's not the goal of a discovery.
Right, and so maybe sort of final question on this topic, because I want to keep time for the multiple others we still need to touch on. But when it comes to discovery, a question I've heard multiple times is, how much budget do you give it? Because from what I understand, you guys are saying at first probably you like discovery is one way to get started if you're not sure already what's going to work, but at some point you want discovery to become something that's actually rather a poor performer, or more specifically something you don't want to consider in the same way as performance campaigns. And so what do you think is a good budget split? What's the share of budget you would want to keep on discovery, assuming you've started scaling already?
I can go for that. Like as I mentioned, it's going to depend, as we said, on like what stage of the exploration of the market you are. Just as a rule of thumb, I would say 10%, but it will depend. As I said, if you are already doing a really, really good job, if you're already bidding on thousands of keywords, maybe discovery should only be 5%. And if you are just at the beginning of your journey, why not having 20 or 30% for discovery? The main point, as I said, not zero. Just please, not zero. Keep some type of discovery running. It's really useful. Then again, what could also differentiate the needing for discovery is going to be the vertical that you're in. In some vertical, it's true that there's not that much variety of keywords out there. There are still some, so you should still be doing discovery. But the name of the game is going to be branded terms and brand attacking each other. An example like this is going to be like the fashion industry. But in other, it's only generic terms, and there are many ways to write that in turn. I think maybe music is such an industry where you need to be on the look for new keywords, and maybe here you should have a rather higher discovery budget. But yeah, main point is about 10%, and definitely more than 0.
Right, and I think it's funny you mentioned fashion, because I think it's going to be a good transition for other tips to scale and really to get more performance. But when you mention fashion is heavily branded and really going after competitors, I know that in a way I guess it's not discovery, but something I find interesting, that sometimes there's also an opportunity to just go beyond your own categories term and look at other categories more as something where if you can position your app as complementary to another app, to another intent. One thing, because Valentine's was just a couple of weeks ago, and something I remember from before I worked at AppTweak, I actually worked in music, and I remember ad campaigns that were run on Valentine's Day, because the point was to say you need a perfect playlist to add to your perfect date. So I think there's still always those options, but that to me is more of the challenges of trying to not stick with the idea of you have a limited number of keywords, you have a limited number of intents you should go after, and more of indeed keep at least a small budget to experiment, knowing that your experiments in most cases aren't necessarily going to deliver high performance, but just to have this option of finding the next way to scale.
Yeah, and that's why, like in terms of KPI, if you want to monitor the performance of the discovery, don't look at its CPA. Count the number of words that you extracted, and if it's a large amount of words, then discovery is doing its job.
Right, but so now let's actually talk about scaling still, because I think it's also the big challenge for a lot of people. Again, we're going to start sort of low-hanging fruit and try to go to the more complex strategies you guys have found. But in like if you're ever starting auditing a new account or taking over a different agent on a performance campaign, usually what's the first things you guys check?
I guess for the low-hanging fruit, I can give a go, because basically this is what we're looking at when we do audits, and then maybe Luca will have more advanced stuff. But the 3 basic things that I will look at in terms of like optimization, purely, so not in account structure, but really like optimization. There are 3. The first one is what we call saturation. I know that some people call it hitting daily cap. There are many terms for it. What I mean is a campaign that spends its entire daily budget. If this happens, and what we call saturation, so we say that this campaign is saturated, then I need to make sure that the company I'm doing the audit for is aware that this is a bad thing. Why is it a bad thing? Because it means that at some point during the day, you're going to run out of budget, so you're not bidding anymore. You're not in the auction, and it's like, in a way, it's like free ground for the competitor, and you're not winning anything. This means that you could increase your daily budget. Let's say the KPIs that you're looking at right now are good. You could just increase the daily budget, and you will run out of budget later on during the day. Ideally, you will reach the point where you don't run out of budget anymore. And so this means you would get more installs for, in theory, the same price, because if the other bids didn't change, there is no reason for the KPIs to change. So this is a super easy way to scale, is just to increase the daily budget if your campaign is saturated. On the other end, if the KPIs for now are a bit too high for you, it's also possible to lower the bid. Lowering the bid will make your installs a bit cheaper. And what's counterintuitive is that if the installs are cheaper, then you run out of budget later on during the day. And so you will get more installs, actually. So when a campaign is saturated, you can get more install either by increasing the daily budget or by lowering the bid.
Right. So basically, daily budget isn't a target. It's a safety mechanism, and just like with actual safety procedures, if you keep hitting your safety mechanism, you're probably not doing the best job, because now you're just arriving at a point where you're putting stress on your own infrastructure in a way, if I can use that before.
You can see it this way, but indeed, it's not clear in people's mind that daily budget is more of a safety mechanism. It's really useful because sometimes you may have like unexpected seasonality, or you might have a search term that goes out of end somewhere, and you're going to spend more. So it's really good to have a safeguard that makes it sure that you're not going to overspend, but you should not be hitting it. And the true lever to control spend actually is keyword bidding. If you want to spend at that level, you don't lower the daily cap to make sure that you hit your daily cap, because it means the KPI you're going to stay the same and you're just spending less. What you would really do is lower the bid. And if you want to scale back, then you raise the bids again. Actually, that brings me to my second point, is that I think people maybe underestimate how powerful bids can be. And in the end, bids can run your entire campaign. There is another way in which people forget that bids can be useful, is that, in my opinion, you should never post keywords. There is always a bid at which the keyword is going to be profitable. Maybe if you're talking about a word that is really not relevant for you, you're not going to appear much, because the right bid might be like 10 cents. But let's say you do appear at some point for this word, like you have a tap on this word for 10 cents, then that's profitable. And I feel like people think that, okay, this keyword is not as good as my top 5, let's pause it and forget about it. I would say no, like, keep it, even if it's in a separate campaign of your low performers, but keep it, have a bid running for it so that you can still scrape some installs. And also, if at some point the performance on this keyword becomes better, you will know. Let's say this competitor is now not bidding anymore on this, like a really relevant competitor on that word is not anymore bidding on that word. That's a way for you to be aware that you're getting more installs. You will see that you have more installs coming on that word on which you have a low bid. So you know that maybe now it's time to ramp back up the bid to actually get the lion's share of the share of voice on that word.
Right. I also want to get Luca in on these questions for scaling, because I've actually gotten to work with you on a couple of accounts, Luca, and I know that a debate we've had in the past was, when you have a strong performing keyword and you see that you already capture a good amount of impression share, it was my understanding that basically the best way to proceed would be to maximize your impression share. As long as you can increase the bid reasonably, you would want to do that to get more impression share and try to get to that 90%, because in the Apple reports, we don't get confirmation if you can ever hit 100%, but wanting to maximize that before moving on. And I know this is something you actually told me is not always the best strategy. So can you explain a bit more what's your reasoning behind this?
The reasoning is based mostly on our experience, is that usually like the latest portion of the impression share are way more expensive than the beginning of it. So let's say maybe you will spend like $1 per tap to get to 50%. Then you will need to pay 1.2 to get to 80. But then to get the remaining 20% impression share, we might actually need to go to $2 actually. So it's not really a linear growth that we usually like see between like the cost per tap we are paying and the impression share we are getting on the same keywords. And even though we do not have like proof of this, like actual like solid data analysis, it seems to be something like really recurring. And if you already have like 80 to 90% impression share on the keywords, it might actually not be worth to go for the last 10 or 20%.
And maybe something to add here is that you need to be really careful about saturation in this case. What I've seen super often is that you see that you are only at 50% on the share of voice of your keyword, and you're like, okay, let's increase my bid to get more. But what you're missing out on is that your campaign is saturated. So at some point during the day, you are not in the auction anymore. So you cannot have 100% share of voice if your campaign is saturated. So that's also something to have in mind, because in this situation, what you end up doing is having a bid. Let's say you have an automation, you have a bid that goes up and up and up and up. In the end, you have like a $200 cost per tap for taps that cost only $2. And this just doesn't make sense.
Right. There's one word I feel we have maybe not avoided, I hope not, but at least we haven't discussed enough right now, and it's ROAS, return on ad spend. So I think that's really the name of the game now. But when it comes to Apple search ads, I've seen that, well, first of all, the fact that in the platform it's not always easy to set up leads to have questions on how to do it in AppTweak. But even when done in AppTweak, what are your considerations? What are your advice to do it well?
Okay, so ROAS, that's not an easy thing to speak about. I'll try to be concise on this one. So to do a proper ROAS optimization, many people will want to go directly to optimize for their actual revenue events. So let's remember a simple thing. Return on ad spends, we want for it to be positive, so we want our revenue to be greater than our spends. In terms of, I would say, more search ads, search result terms, it means that for a given event, we want for the average return per event to be greater actually than the cost per event we're paying on the keywords for it. So that's the rule we are trying to match for keywords. And we could do it for any event, okay? So let's say, like most people will say, okay, I will try to optimize then for my cost per subscription, if it's a subscription-based business or any other in-app events. But thing is, these revenue generating events are often rather have a low occurrence. So what I mean by that, it's sometimes subscription can be have a conversion rate of less than 5%, for example. In this case, if you try to actually take decision on the bid of a keyword, you will have to wait for a long time, especially for low traffic keywords. So let's say now I've got a keyword which has generated 10 installs, and that I'm actually willing to optimize for my cost per subscription of this keyword. If the average conversion rate of this event is 5%, after 10 taps, there is a high probability to not get anyone. Can I say that this keyword is worth 0? The answer is obviously not. So something which is really important when doing MMP-based automation is actually to find proxy events. So what I mean by proxy events is that it must be events which are triggered with a high enough occurrence for you to be rapidly able to define this conversion rate. Like after 10 installs, am I already able to have an idea of how much of a quality user the one which are installing on this keyword are? Sorry, this sentence was not super great. So really, the idea is to know rapidly if people are valuable. And so if you are in the gaming industry, it might be actually, maybe out of these people which have installed it, how much have reached level 5, or maybe how much are still connecting after 7 days. And so if you are able to build a model which can like map a value for these events, you can directly take educated decision way earlier in the lifetime of the keywords. And so this is really important, because if you are doing discovery right, you will actually rely on a lot of low traffic keywords, and you will want to be able to extract them fast and set the right bid for them fast. And even though it might be as perfect with proxy events, it will prove better on the short run. And yeah, I think that's kind of sum up all what I want to say.
Yeah, and so basically to summarize, that way I can make sure everyone's following with me. What you're saying here is a lot of revenue events happen late enough in a funnel that if you optimize purely based on those, it just means you're gonna have an optimization cycle that's every several days, potentially every several weeks. And so it's basically the steps are to first map your overall user flow in your app with your MMP map, what are signals, what are going to be the proxy events, so that you can optimize on those rather than purely optimize on a revenue event if you're in this situation, because your whole point is it's usually you perform better by frequently updating your bid, even if you're updating them on a suboptimal event, rather than trying to optimize them at the optimal event, but much less often. Did I get it right?
Yeah, you summarized it pretty well. And
Awesome.
you were speaking about like you will need to wait a couple of days, weeks, for some keywords. It might even take like months to actually like be able to define the right bits if we were relying only on revenue events.
Cool. I see the clock is turning. I know we have more we can cover, and probably more we want to cover, but there's been already several questions in the chat. At this point, I'm going to ask you to maybe give your top tips that you haven't covered already. But meanwhile, I also want to invite people listening to us to actually open the questions box, which is just next to the chat when you look at the interface. Because that way we're going to be able to pick your questions one by one and track them a bit better. We'll try also after the session, we have the chat saved. So we'll try to see if we can also reach back to some people we haven't been able to answer. But in general, really inviting everyone to start leaving their questions. And before we turn to those, already asking you guys as maybe a first conclusion, if you can share, let's say the top tricks you have. We have mentioned automation. So, for instance, favorite automation rules, favorite trick to start scaling fast beyond the fundamentals.
Okay, I'll start on this one if I may.
Of course.
Go ahead.
Okay. My favorite one, I think I will, and that's why I decided to start. I will steal this one from you, Benoit, is actually monitoring your your saturation. I know that we've talked about a lot, but we've got an automation rule which is actually able to signal you by email that actually you are reaching your daily budget, and this is really something super important to manage, to actually know if you need to reduce your bids or increase your budget. Then I will have another one, which is we have also an automation rules, which permits you to directly optimize keywords which are actually performing well. And by performing well, what I mean is that we can set up a target cost per installs, and it will automatically raise the bids for which their actual cost per install is below the one that you've set up. So this is an easy way to actually, if you know that you've got a couple more dollars to spend, to know that you are actually trying to spend them on the right keywords. And lastly, one which is, we didn't talk about this, but we have also an automation rules which permits you to protect your top performers, because sometimes you might be attacked by some competitors, and you might want to actually like raise your bids if you are actually losing impression share on your top keywords. And we have also something for this at AppTweak.
All right, and maybe just for me, super quickly before we go to the questions, like what I really love is to launch new countries and doing it super efficiently. You can just duplicate campaigns. You have an existing campaign, you duplicate it in the new country that you want to target. You set up broad match, search match, and exact match discovery, and just wait. And the day after, you have a lot of data. You can already take many decisions, and it's a really good way to scale in the end, because you're just getting more revenue in new markets.
All right. Well, I think mine would also be mentioning the CPPs. You guys have mentioned it before, but coming from more of an ASO background, it's always satisfying to also prove that you can also optimize campaigns, scale campaigns from just getting better performance from a campaign, from an ad group that's already existing, and that you can keep improving these. But now turning to questions, I think we already have several that are a bit broad. So maybe starting with Chloe, who's asking us what would be the ideal campaign and ad group structure for the French market. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about specificities in the French market.
I'm not aware of specificities really depending on countries. Maybe coming back on our campaign structure, the only thing which would be specific to France would be actually the splitting by intent into ad group. But to give an answer for this, we will also need the categories of the category of the app we are doing a campaign for to know kind of what are the intents. But I would still recommend to go for the classic like structure. So discovery campaigns and the performance campaigns on the end, with the splitting for performance between brand, competitors, and category generic keywords. And then just try, when you are extracting keywords from your discovery campaign to your performance one, to actually do the additional effort to try to split them by intents into different ad groups. And yeah, that's what I will go for. I don't know if you have any other thought, Benoit?
Well, I'm French, and I don't even know what would be more specific to France than for what we said. So I guess our advice is pretty generic, because I would apply it to any country. So that would include France.
Well, I'll actually say not necessarily specific to France per se, but more of something I've seen is sometimes underestimated when approaching a specific market. It's remember that your campaign is running in an app store country, not always in a geographical country, meaning that Benoit, since you already mentioned you're French, you actually live in Belgium, but you might still be using the French app store. And so if you're having to reconcile things, sometimes you have to be mindful that if you're seeing from your MMPs that some of your installs are coming from outside France, even though your campaign was meant to run in France, this is what can happen, because your MMP is going to look at the IP of the install, whereas Apple just looks at the store country of the user. And that is, in my opinion, more interesting when you look at the other end, which is that if you have a product that can also be very appealing to expats, you may want to actually be running campaigns in other markets, because they might have switched to a different app store country, but still be relevant. So it's part of the extra localization games, etc. Something we're more familiar with ASO, but that's definitely something I find to be a bit interesting. Jumping to another question now from Melina this time, regarding saturation. So her question is, if you increase your bid to get more share of voice, you mentioned that you likely overspend on the cost per tap because you'll hit the budget cap. If that's so, then how do you build back on share of voice effectively when a new competitor is gaining 70%, 80% share of voice on your core keywords?
Not sure I follow entirely the process, because I don't see exactly how the CPA cap will. So yeah, just reading the question. When you say like hitting a budget cap, this will depend on how you structure the campaign. You can, if your campaign is properly structured, you can increase the bid on a keyword without hitting the budget cap. What you can hit is the saturation of the keyword. You can go to the spot where you are like at over 90% share of voice on that keyword. So this is something that you can hit, and once you reach that, there is no point in increasing the bid. But if not, if the campaign is hitting its saturation, then if you want to get the SOV back from the competitor who stole from you, I guess what you need to do is increase the daily budget of your campaign and bid more. Or if the daily budget is really cannot be increased, you can always have the possibility of lowering the bid on other keywords to get more share of budget on this keyword if you want to fight back against that competitor. I don't know if that would answer the question, or if you have more to add on that.
Yeah, I think it was a good explanation, but I think there is another also option you might still want to try in this case, because there might be like some cases where the competitor is just like bidding too high for you and you're not willing to pay as much. So one of the only like remaining solution in this case is to run a CPP actually, because by running a CPP, you might, if it's a nice one, you might be actually able to raise your tap-through rate and your conversion rate. By doing this, you will be more competitive for these keywords, and you might still win. You might be able to win the auction without changing your bid actually. So this is still something which can help you in this case.
Okay. I see several more questions, but we're at time, so I'm just going to give a couple ones a quick mention before we wrap up. First one is from Terry, asking if we've had any experience working on apps that perform much better on iPad, and as a result, running campaigns for iPad only. I don't know, guys, if you have specific thoughts. I just want to mention that something I've looked into from an ASO perspective is then trying to still run on iPhone, but focus specifically on keywords that end with for iPad, mostly as an effort to just like generate interest, because sometimes people are just going to start by looking for an app that's cross-device compatible, something that they know they'll be using on their iPad. And then I think the challenge when you do that is more of checking if people naturally also download your app on their iPad once they're back at home with a proper device, or alternatively using CRM efforts to remind them that maybe they want to also download your app for iPad. So that's more of the trick I wanted to mention. Not sure if you guys have any additional thoughts on this.
Just that you can always target a device in your ad group. So there are many that we didn't mention too much about the fact that you can target more specifically in the ad group. You can target the audience and everything. So you could target only iPad, but then you need to be careful about you need to be really careful about the SOV. So you can't use SOV anymore because you are restricting your audience. So this is just the kind of stuff that you have to be mindful of.
All right, I think we're really at time, so we're going to have to end it here. But thanks again to everyone who joined us. Obviously, we wanted to make this educational, so we haven't insisted too much on the capabilities of the AppTweak platform. But for those who have not played around recently, I would really invite everyone to try it again, and definitely reach out as well if you have more questions. As hinted out multiple times, Benoit and Luca run short audits that we call scans. We also have a team of consultants who can help with long-term campaign management. So in general, there's a lot we can help cover. And so obviously for people interested to learn more about how we work on Apple Search Ads, we'll be very happy to continue the conversation offline. Thank you again, everyone. And
maybe as a last point, if you want to learn more,
yeah, sure.
If some of you in the audience are in MWC, I'll be in MWC next week in Barcelona. So if you want to just stop by our booth and chat a bit more about everything that was mentioned today, or not, even go beyond, feel free.
Thank you again, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.
Okay, thanks. Bye.